Many people have heard the term LGBTQ, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning people. Today we're hopeful to shed light on the T in LGBTQ. Little is really known about the T part, which stands for transgender, or people who identify with another gender versus the biological sex to which they were assigned to at birth. From the Missouri Health Equity Collaborative, or MOHEC, I'm Amy Dunaway, and in this podcast, I talk with parents from Transparent, a support group for parents and families of transgender youth. Transparent serves the greater St. Louis metropolitan region, and the parents featured in this podcast come from a variety of backgrounds and walks of life, but have faced similar challenges. Some of these challenges have been well documented. For instance, we know that transgender people can experience a range of traumatic emotions, including anxiety and depression, due to feeling different or not understood. Because of stigma and victimization, many transgender people and their families pay a high price. According to national statistics, more than half of transgender youth will have had at least one suicide attempt by their 20th birthday. The purpose of this 4-part series is to gain a better understanding of parents' experiences raising transgender youth. You can download the entire series at mohec.org or listen to them individually. There may be terms in this segment or in others that are unfamiliar to you. A glossary of terms, audio transcripts, and additional information can be found at mohec.org as well. In our first segment of this podcast, Little Girl Who Wants to Be a Boy, I talk with Jen, who is in a military family. As Jen explains, there are few resources for parents on raising a transgender child, and moreover, the very healthcare providers that you might think can help you don't always have the answers either. And sometimes, the best resource you have is Google. Here's Jen.
My name is Jen, and I have one child. He is 7 years old. He was assigned female at birth, and around the age, I would say 2.5, 3, he started exhibiting some behaviors that indicated that he preferred boy things. So he wanted to play with boy toys, dress in boy clothes, refused to wear girls' clothes, didn't want anything to have to do with dresses, no frills, no pink, no laces, no butterflies. And that was the first indication that something wasn't quite right. Then it was the request of shortening the hairstyle, and when we did allow him to cut his hair, you could tell that there was a dramatic difference in the way he looked at himself in the mirror. I describe it as this rooster or peacock emerged from this child, where before his hair was not a favorite thing of his. There were several indications that led up to the point of social transition. One of them was stuffing his pants with toilet paper. Another one was having dreams of actually living as a boy and smiling in his dreams. I would go and wake him up in the morning and he would be smiling, and I would gently wake him up and then ask him, wow, that must have been a great dream. And he was saving the world. He was a boy Power Ranger. He would play house with his friends, but he was never a female role. He was always the dad or the brother. The refusal one day to wear a dress, which led into a big argument between him and I as early as, I want to say this was around 4 years old, 3.5, 4 years old. And me asking him, just put on the dress. Who cares what you're wearing? And he said, but Mom, I care. So that was another defining moment for me. So after a couple of years of this, I started to research. I had no idea what transgender meant, but I was aware that there were members of our society that felt that they were in opposite gender roles. So I did a Google search, Little Girl Who Wants to Be a Boy, and transgender popped up. And that's when I first started to realize that we were maybe looking at this path for our child. So at the age of 6, I was lucky enough to find Transparent in the St. Louis area, and it was refreshing to know that other people were still on this journey or going through this journey. Shortly after that, I bit the bullet and asked my son if he would like to change his name from a female name to a male name. And he said yes. And I went, oh boy, what do we do now? But he had already been, for a year before that, before I had asked him about the name change, he had already been asking me if I could address him as my son instead of my daughter. And he had already looked like a typical boy, so people were already calling him buddy or him or he, and we just got to the point where we weren't correcting it. So at the point of social transition, though, is really when it gets very difficult for parents to absorb what's happening and let others know. The coming out process is extremely difficult for family members at any age. What was helpful for me was to do some research myself and find out that transgender people have been around forever. They may not have been acknowledged, but throughout time there have been transgender people in our history, and I really think it's a normal variation of human characteristics. A thing that helped me was soon after his transition, I had to go to one of his camps and explain to them how he didn't want to be addressed as a female anymore, and it happened to be a zoo camp, and they were helpful to me because they explained that there's many different species of animals that have these type of characteristics, and it really helped me to see that maybe the way I was taught wasn't exactly correct. Maybe there are other variations, and I shouldn't be so hard on myself because this is going against everything that I know. That helped me. So if there's anything that I would tell another parent is that I feel it is a perfectly normal expression of a human characteristic. I was only taught that there was either a boy or a girl, and I think that's why I was hard on myself. I come from a very liberal background. It still was hard for me to wrap my mind around this idea of something being other than a boy or a girl. We are a military family. My initial healthcare provider, I assumed, would see the changes that were happening to my child as we would visit her office regularly for acute visits. You know, see the changing of the clothes and always being in male clothing and the shortening of the hair, and it was never a question. Our pediatrician never said anything to us, and finally when I had the nerve to ask her, and I had been in to this pediatrician's office maybe 4 or 5 times that year, and each time I had the intention of going, what do you think of this? And I would chicken out. But the last time I was there, I said, my daughter wants to be a boy. And I started crying, and my pediatrician said, don't worry about it, it's just a phase. And that was 2 years ago. So being that we're a military family, healthcare is very frightening for me because we get seen by a new pediatrician that's in rotation every year. We get assigned a new pediatrician for our son. And you never know what kind of reaction you're going to get by each new healthcare provider. I'm almost afraid to take him in for an earache. I would rather wait it out and see if he is going to get well on his own than take him in to have to explain yet to another person who could be judgmental of our situation or cause us any trouble with being in the military. In our situation, we actually live on a military installation, so there are certain aspects of acute care that require us to be seen by the facility on base. If we did elect to see a provider off of base, it would still have to be within the military system, but we would have to pay a different premium for that service. It was a difficult transition for my husband because he is away from the home often with deployments and things like that. He wasn't seeing all or witnessing all the changes that were happening with our child. And, springing that kind of thing on him when he isn't witnessing this throughout the years was hard to do. Him accepting these changes, that if he didn't see it with his own eyes, he wasn't going to believe it. And that was difficult. But once he spent some more time with our child, he began to see the same things that I was seeing. I think parents have to give up their expectations at a very early age. In our case, I know that I can't expect our child to be just like me, even though when he was born, I expected that he would do things like I did them. And this journey has taught me that he is his own person. And even though he was assigned female at birth, he picks up characteristics and behaviors and mannerisms that his dad exhibits. He is not interested in following what his mom recommends he do. He wants to be just like his dad. And my advice would be to just let any child tell you who they are and let them identify themselves with their own personality. That will make the whole childhood experience a more rewarding experience. We support our child no matter if our child is transgender or if he is cisgender. We love him for exactly who he is, and we're a loving family, and we just want to see our child grow up to be happy and healthy and confident. I don't have any fears. I don't think anymore about his future. I think once you have a chance to meet people within the transgender community, you will find that they are the smartest, funniest, loving group of people that you could ever meet. And there's nothing to be afraid of. He can be a productive member of society. He can live a happy, healthy, full life. And he can find a partner who will love him for exactly who he is. I believe he feels good. We visit an endocrinologist every 6 months because we're establishing a relationship with him. And when we go, he tells him that he's not anxious about growing breasts. He knows he doesn't want breasts, but he's not anxious about it. And he says he's not anxious because he knows that everything will be okay. I think he feels good. He's a happy, healthy, thriving young boy. He plays ice hockey and he does boys gymnastics, and he's got great grades, and he's excellent at math, and he has some great friends. He has a normal childhood, and we hope to do everything to keep that childhood happy. I would like pediatricians to know that if one of their children could be exhibiting behavior that doesn't match their biological sex, to maybe ask them to draw a picture of themselves. Or when they come into their office or the clinic, ask them to change their shoes and have a wide variety of slippers they can put on. Now, I understand that not all families are accepting and open of this transition, but if a pediatrician could give an opportunity to a child for them to express themselves without being too intrusive, that might give them something to watch for. I would have certainly have loved the opportunity to discuss this with a pediatrician if I felt the pediatrician was willing to discuss it with me, rather than having the anxiety of every time going to the pediatrician's office wondering if I should say something.